And so the transition begins to discuss it all, what it might look like, and what transpired last night into today. John Heilemann, managing editor of Bloomberg Politics, co-host of The Circus on Showtime, a division of CBS.
And The Walking Dead.
Which is, seems also relevant.
And the primary exemplar of zombie journalism.
Yeah, this is just, it's nighttime with the sun. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'll be as
blunt?
35,000 feet up as I.
Okay.
What happened here?
Well, on what level? Like, what happened in terms of why we all got it wrong?
Well,
what
not
happened?
just got it wrong. How was?
Yeah.
I mean, how was this missed to this degree?
Well, I think a lot of things were screwy about this. I mean, I think there's the obvious thing, which is that polling is broken, like in a profound, deep way, and the Clinton campaign was really genuinely convinced, I mean, up until 8:30 last night, that they were totally fine in Pennsylvania, they were going to win Michigan, they were going to win Wisconsin, they were going to be fine in Colorado, that they had the whole thing in hand, and genuinely confident about that. Their numbers were as messed up as the public polling is. And it's not just in America. We say, obviously, Brexit's a really good example, but there's a bunch of examples in Western Europe. The likely voter models are screwed up. This particular thing that I'm obsessed with, which is the reason why you could be convinced, guaranteed, there was no way Hillary Clinton could lose this race, was that she was going to do something that no Democrats ever done before, which was she was going to win white college-educated voters, right? Because there were 6 months of polling that showed her leading with white college-educated women by about 30 points and white college-educated men by about 12, 15. So last night the actual numbers came in. She won white college-educated women by like 10 and lost white college-educated men by like a dozen. That's a 25-point miss on both, right? And that's 6 months of polling, public and private. So what's going on there, right? The polling's messed up, but also you had this reverse Bradley effect. It seems like what happened was a lot of white college-educated voters were embarrassed to say they were for Donald Trump, but were for Donald Trump, not because they necessarily approve of everything Donald Trump's for, but they're like ready to throw a stick of dynamite under the whole edifice of Washington, D.C. And the thing of this is all about white college-educated or about white working-class voters, some of that's true, but the populist desire to blow shit up, I just said that on television, yeah. The populist desire to blow stuff up is bipartisan, ecumenical, and not confined to one particular class. It's much broader than people understand. And people in our business and people in the political class have really missed the depth of it. And that's, I think, a large part of what the story of this election has been.
There are multiple stages of grief playing out inside the Democratic Party right now. The first would seem to be disbelief.
Yeah.
Eventually, I feel like we'll come to recriminations.
Yeah.
And I think, John,
we're there already.
Quickly, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, who flirted with a run, we're told earlier this year, could they have won?
Here's the other big fact that goes to this, right, that we know today, which is Donald Trump got fewer votes than Mitt Romney got in 2012. So what happened there is not Donald Trump didn't get a whole bunch of new voters to come into the process. He managed to win. He will end up winning somewhere in the low 300 electoral votes if these states fall the way they're supposed to fall, by getting fewer popular votes than Mitt Romney got, which means that there was an epic fail on the part of Hillary Clinton to turn out, not only to not turn out the Obama coalition in toto, but not only turn out even a decent chunk of it, and then let alone to kind of build some kind of a Hillary Clinton coalition. She was a magnificent failure as a candidate, and this goes to the question for a lot of Democrats. I think there's going to be a massive bloodletting on the left and over whether they just picked the wrong horse in a fundamental way. She obviously had huge problems. She also had certain things that she might have been able to build out, but she never built out. No one can really talk about what her rationale for running was. What was the case she actually made to voters that would have attracted a kind of a coalition that was built around her positive vision for the country. And again, all this stuff, people said these things as this campaign unfolded, but you saw all the things that were wrong with Trump, all of the liabilities that Trump had. And you kind of took your eye off the ball, which was that she was just a terrible candidate who didn't build anything like what you need to do to build to win an election. And I think, for people like Joe Biden and people around Joe Biden, they all are 100% convinced that if he'd run, that he would have been much more attuned to this populist moment that we were talking about before, and that he would have been able to compete in a bunch of states where she manifestly failed. Again, Michigan, which is not yet, she's not officially lost Michigan yet, but I'm almost certain she will. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these are states where the demographic change has not been that great, and you have to be able to connect to a certain number of white working class voters. She failed totally to do that. And so, yes, there's a lot of recrimination around people, not just Bidenistas, but yes, Bernie Sanders people who are already talking about how, I last night said something on some broadcast about how Bernie Sanders fell slightly short of taking the nomination against Hillary Clinton. And immediately, all of the Sanders voices rose up and said, no, he didn't fall short. It was stolen from him by the Democratic National Committee, who was in the tank for Hillary Clinton. So that recrimination was starting last night on the part of people in the Sanders part of the party. And again, I think, if Elizabeth Warren had run, she would have run a better race against Donald Trump, because she would have been able to tap into that millennial vote that Clinton manifestly failed to do. She would have run as a populist in a way that she couldn't. There's a million what ifs, right? But I think Democrats are going to spend a lot of time over the next few months thinking about how we could have lost to this guy and how bad your candidate had to be to lose to Donald Trump.
And you couldn't help but notice last night, as we hit midnight and the concentric circles started shrinking and all eyes were there on Michigan, a state that she lost to Bernie Sanders in the primary. John, as well, for President Obama now, who in his staunch surrogacy, certainly in these last days, had woven into the fabric of it, this is my legacy on the line. This is personal for me. 83% of the voters said that change it all at any cost. Essentially, that trumped everything else. What to make then of that legacy?
Well, and also what to make of the fact that he's a guy with a pretty decently, healthily north of 50% approval rating. I think that the wrong track numbers and the disapproval, the change number, is a kind of is a broad gauge thing, right? So you have a lot of Democrats who believe the country's on the wrong track and blame Republicans for that. It's not like kind of a specific rejection of the Obama legacy. In some cases, it obviously is. There are millions of people who don't like what Barack Obama did. But Donald Trump
was the change
candidate. Yes, there's no question about that. But I mean, I think there are a lot of Republicans who are for Donald Trump because they hate the Republican establishment as much as they hate the Democratic establishment. Donald Trump is a stick of dynamite, right? And you're a lot of Republicans who are for Trump because they don't like Mitch McConnell, they don't like Paul Ryan, they don't like Barack Obama, they don't like Joe Biden, they don't like Hillary Clinton. They don't like any of those people. And again, roll the stick of dynamite into the Capitol and see what happens. I think, look, the consequences for President Obama are huge because, will Republicans repeal the Affordable Care Act? Yeah. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They're now going to control not just Donald Trump in the White House, but they've maintained control of the Senate. They've maintained control of the House. They've campaigned on nothing but repealing Obamacare for now, ever since it passed. Will they do it? I think unquestionably they'll do it, and they'll do it relatively quickly. Not quite the way that Trump thinks, because he doesn't really understand how legislation gets passed, but they will move to do that rapidly, I think, and that will just be the beginning. Dodd-Frank, a whole bunch of things in the Obama, what were trophies on the Obama mantle will now be torn down and either thrown. There will be no
the judicial
Court
branch.
Right. There are a million. There are just everything.
But
there's nothing secure at this point.
Yeah. So Obama legacy, one thing, but quickly, campaigns and how they're run and the estimation that you have to have a ground game and you need to know who your voters are. It needs to be a data-driven operation. Out the window, or is it just this is a crazy election year? Well,
I think that look, Donald Trump brought a bunch of very potent, unique, not necessarily unique, but unusual characteristics. I mean, he was, a guy who had a television show that 25 million people watched every single week when it was in its peak, right? That's an incredible base to bring into a campaign. He won 14 million votes in the Republican nomination fight. And obviously won a lot more in the general election. But to start with 25 million regular viewers who watch you every week religiously is a thing that not that many people can bring. So Trump, celebrity may be a thing that renders. If you're a celebrity on that level and you're rich on that level, it may render get out the vote and traditional campaigning metrics obsolete. I don't think that if you're a normal candidate, you can just give up on all the science and the normal stuff that campaigns now do in the modern era.
John Heilemann, Bloomberg Politics. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, and the profanity? Less so.
We'll be checking.
We'll be censoring that.
Less so.
You're on a delay.
Less so.
With the corner offices.
Less so. This is what happens when you get me on with no sleep, guys. I'm old. I can't do the all-nighters anymore and still keep it together.
Young at heart, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or something.
Keeping it somewhat real.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, as always.